Oh, beautiful. One good shot out of 3. Let's go for a walk. So, a few years ago, about 10 years ago nearly, I think, I made a surprisingly popular video called Why Do Olympic Archers Swing Their Bows? And that was meant to be for the layperson, someone who hasn't seen Olympic archery before, talking about the equipment, the technique, and the weird spinny thing that we do. And it's one thing when you're shooting 10-meter backyard and you wonder why that's even necessary. But when you shoot 70 meters, long distance, Olympic distance, you do have to do things a bit differently, because the name of the game is the margin of error. Archery is a game of millimeters. So we're walking here unedited to show you firstly how far we have to go, how far we have to shoot, and what we're aiming for. Now, a good archer will guarantee hits on gold 9 out of 10 times. Talk about the top archers, the Olympians, the world champions, the Koreans. They can guarantee, even in winning conditions, first shot gold. Now, I've shot 3, pretty mediocre for me. Got 1 in the 7 ring, 1 in the 7 ring up there, so 1 at 1 o'clock, 1 6 o'clock, and a 10. That's my last shot, which I knew was a good shot. So I would have loved to have guaranteed first shot, flex, and talk about it, but pretty much an average grouping for an average archer. So this is what we're aiming for. At 70 meters, we want to hit this 12 centimeter 10 ring. The gold ring, the 9 and 10, about 24 centimeters, but that's really the sweet spot we're aiming for. That's a grouping that is comparable to shooting firearms, so we're shooting bows and arrows in high wind. So with that in mind, let's consider what it takes to achieve that level of consistency using the human body as a machine. Let's talk about the bow swing, the what, the how, the why, the so what. We'll bring it inside and we'll talk in a more sheltered space. So we're back inside, away from the wind. The wind stopped now, of course, but let's go through why this happens and explain the mechanics, the biomechanics, for those who are practicing the same kind of archery. Let's do a shot first. Let's do a second shot. Wasn't happy with that one. There we go. Okay. So let's talk about the bow spin or the bow swing. So let's work backwards a little bit. Why does the bow swing? Physics. That seems like a dumb answer, but just examine the bow for a bit here. So the bows, which if you're not used to Olympic archery, the bows which you might be used to seeing are the straightforward stick and string, wooden bow, string. It's as simple as it gets. Those bows don't swing. These bows do, and the primary reason is because of this thing over here, the long rod stabilizers. So what modern recurve shooters try to do is they try to minimize the amount of opposing forces which might interfere with consistency. So in many cases, the center of balance of the bow is actually a little further forward here. All right, so if the bow is straight in the hand, when you pull it back, the mass of the bow moving backwards and you actually pulling back will naturally cause the bow to rise. Now, for those shooting trad, this is something which you have to contend with. I know this is how we've shot bows for centuries. That's how bows work. But bows are not perfect devices. We adapt technique to counteract opposing forces. That, however, is the enemy of consistency. Every shot is going to be slightly different. So a modern target recurve shooter will ideally calibrate their weight and bow mass so that at full draw, the bow sits in the hand. So consider here, I'm not drawing the bow back, it's going to want to tip forward because the mass is front heavy. I pull it back, and it's actually really comfortable. Right, I can hold it still. And there's some fine tuning involved in the number of weights and how heavy and the angle of the stabilizers and so on. But the principle was that you want the bow to be on target with minimal interference from yourself. And because of the front heavy nature of these bow weights and balances, once you let go, the bow will want to jump forward. That's why the bow moves forward. Now, if you're shooting a bare bow, modern bare bow with weights on the riser, even a trad bow, and you don't hold the bow will tend to swing backwards because the bow tends to be more balanced this way. It'll kind of tip backwards, it won't really go forwards. But because of the stabilizer rod specifically, the weight of these bows is forward. This is one of the key advantages which the freestyle or Olympic recurve has over modern bare bow. The long rods make a huge difference, and that's why the bow jumps forward or swings forward. Now, why does it spin? It's because of the bow sling. We are wearing bow slings, so these retain the bow. Otherwise, the bow will drop. The test of a good release and follow through is actually you have your coach stand in front of the bow and will catch the bow, not on a concrete floor hopefully, but will catch the bow when you let go. That's a sign of a good release. But we don't want that to happen, of course, in competition. We don't want to drop our bows, therefore we wear a sling. So what happens is we release, the bow jumps forward, it catches onto the sling, and then we let it drop by ourselves. Again, working backwards here. Why do we let the bow jump out? Why don't we just hold it normally? And the reason why is because, like we said earlier, we want to minimize the amount of opposing forces on the bow. If we grip the bow with our fingers, and these bows, by the way, aren't designed to be held comfortably with the fingers wrapped around the riser. A lot of new archers who start with these bows often forget that you're not meant to hold the bow like this. That's got a more traditional grip with all the fingers on the bow. The modern target grips are more relaxed, seated grips. So they're more like this. So depending on your bow geometry and grip geometry, it might be positioned differently, but we generally keep our fingers off the bow. It just sits there. And the reason for that is if we grip it, we are going to apply tension on the bow. We are going to torque the bow. That's unavoidable. So as you pull back, you're going to find your fingers and your hand will tense and you start going this way. And as you saw outside, even a few millimeters of twist or torque will drive the arrow in a different direction. And we can feel it. We can feel it the moment we let go. It's slightly off center. The string will come off differently. It will sound differently. It'll fly differently. That's why a good archer, and I did it outside, when you shoot a good shot, you will hear it. You will feel it. You know it's going to go straight to where you pointed it. If it's a slightly bad shot, there's a bit more vibration, you know you've applied some torque, and the follow through will usually betray that. So all these things are crucial elements of the what, how, why, of the bow spinning around. Again, we're not trying to force this, and there's anything you gotta take from this video. Let the bow do what it wants to do. Don't force it to happen, and don't stop it from happening. So the premise of the entire thing, it's follow through. Follow through is part of any sport that involves motion. And despite archery looking quite static in terms of sports, there is movement involved. And the movement is specifically that directional pull and push of the draw and the expansion. This is the motion involved. It's not much motion in archery, but that one motion must be pinpoint precise. And as if every motion, there has to be a follow through. Think a swing in baseball, a swing in golf, even a basketball free throw, or even playing snooker or pool. There is a follow through. You're meant to follow through, that is to shoot through or move through the motion. You don't stop your punch halfway, you have to follow through. Or same as swing or a kick or any other motion in sport. You must follow through. If you stop, it puts more strain on you very often, but it also interferes with your execution of the shot because you're aiming for a point before your release or your contact, and therefore you don't commit to the shot. With archery, it's the same thing. You have to commit to the direction of the draw and the expansion. Now, you often see with beginners especially, and especially if not using a clicker, I'm going to do a demo shot without the clicker, just demonstrate what a lot of people do. You'll see creep. I do it quite often with my trad bows. I'm just not used to shooting trad without a clicker, but a lot of people shoot with creep. So that's one of the signs that you aren't actually shooting correctly. So I'm going to do a shot without the clicker just to demonstrate my point. So we'll do bare shaft, because why not? So what happens is people might pull back and go overdraw and then underdraw and then hover here and then shoot like that. Okay, and you end up with a bit of a limp release, and you might tighten the action to look a little crisper, but at the end of the day, you end up with shots which don't really feel like good shots. We'll do a second shot here. Again, we'll do the limp follow through. We'll keep it a little tighter, but watch the bow hand in, and that's kind of what it feels like. So a bit of a jittery movement back and forward. That's something you have to train out of, but it also betrays a lack of commitment. Now we'll do a proper shot now. What I'm looking for here is commitment. Now I'm at a distance I can't miss, it's only 10 meters, 5 meters, I'm indoors. So we're gonna go straight through with the shot. We'll anchor, we'll expand, and we'll follow through. There we go. That's a bit of a long pull there. We'll do another one. There we go, that's better. So what I'm trying to demonstrate there differently is that I've got a single focus in my mind. Go, go, go. The shot's lined up, it's good. I've chosen to expand, that's my green light. I go, go, go. I don't think about when to let go. I've got a clicker that will click when I'm ready to go, and I let go as soon as it clicks. And because I'm committed to that motion, I will let the follow through happen on both sides. The release hand, because I'm going this way, the release hand will go back this way, and the bow hand will go forward. And in turn, the bow is allowed to drop according to the physics of the bow, and I let it drop. That's basically how the bow swing works. Like I said before, don't stop it happening, don't force it to happen. All right, time for some more of the nitty-gritty specifics on the bow swing, especially those who are training Olympic archery and you want to learn good technique. How do you achieve that follow through? So I said before, don't stop it from happening, don't force it to happen. Those are two things with the follow through. Not every bow is calibrated to swing in that particular way. It's just the most common setup will have a fairly common circle, which you'll see most archers do. But depending on your equipment and your technique, that won't necessarily be the case. So we'll cover some of these exceptions. So I'll talk through the don't stop it from happening first. Okay, this is the most common thing with beginners with these bows, and that is the fear of letting go. All right, you're not used to having this big bow tied to a sling on your fingers, so you might be inclined to just hold the bow normally. Keep the fingers off the bow. All right, even if you're using shooting without a sling, you might keep one finger to retain it, or two maybe. But if you have a sling, fingers off the bow. So if you're holding the fingers vertical like that, wrong. Okay, the grip is not shaped to do that. The grip is shaped to put the pressure on the base of the thumb. The meaty, fleshy part of the thumb sits on the grip as a pressure point, and the fingers are off. Now, my little recommendation is to pull your pinky finger back so you can seat the bow correctly on that fleshy part there. Another common thing I see beginners do is what you might call like a claw grip or a spear grip. The fingers are tense. So fingers tense pointing forward, or you might be off the riser, but they're extended. This is basically going to make you grip the bow. As soon as you release it, your fingers will clinch it, and you're going to spoil the shot. I'll demonstrate this. I'll just do a bad shot. We'll go clicker off just to make this a bit easier. So we'll line up with the tense fingers like that, as most people tend to do, or the spear grip like that. these two grips are not desirable because the moment you let go, you're going to just naturally clench it. So you have to keep the fingers off the riser. Okay, so knuckles should be around 45 to 60 degrees off the horizontal. So again, it's a cup thing and a bow grip thing, but you don't want to touch the riser with your fingers. If you touch it or your fingers are on it, even if they're off it, but they're tense, you're going to grab it. You don't want to do that. Let the bow drop forward. Now the other thing is when you feel like you want to copy someone's follow through and you force that to happen, which is kind of weird. And there are actually two parts of the follow through which can be too artificial. One is the second anchor. Some people like having a draw point behind the head or shoulder where they'll pull through to it. That can mentally help. I actually don't mind that because that can help you align your direction of movement. But if you're going like bang and then, oh yeah, that's a fake follow through, that's not going to work. So you don't want to go release, swat flies, and then anchor. You can go, I'm going to touch the back of my head, so I release. Yeah, that works. A lot of people do a finger flick or something to trace the motion. Not everyone does, but you can do so. But more importantly, like don't force the bow hand to do something it's not naturally going to do. So we sometimes see people, I'll shoot a clicker shot. They might pull the bow down completely. Let's do a short quick shot here. Squeeze, click. And I just yanked it back like that. All right, I just hit all my arrows here. That's not necessarily a good thing. Likewise, you don't want to kind of flick the wrist either. Like it's hard to do with the bow, so we'll keep it off. But some people might do the whole flick. They go finger down like that. They might copy like a Korean women's archer. So, oh, she does that. I want to do it too. Flick, flick, and the bow spins around majestically. It's really hard to copy a particular follow through unless your bow is set up the exact same way. So again, the weights, the length, the distances, they can be different. So you can't physically copy a technique unless the bow is set up in a similar way. So my general advice here is keep the bow hand relaxed. The bow will drag the hand down. So once you let go and you're wearing the sling, it will tip forward and your hand, which is relaxed, will likewise flip forward because there's no tension in the hand. Once you start inducing tension, that's when you start throwing shots off. And last thing to watch out for is the bow grip. Make sure you grip the bow consistently on the right place. So most of these bows have the fat pistol style grip and the meaty part of the thumb goes there. Now, if you're correctly applying pressure on the pressure point, the bow will move forward and tip this way. If you are using a lower grip where you're holding it, choking it by the throat here, and the weight's more on the webbing of your fingers, then you're more likely to pull the bow out this way. You will see some archers do that. Most archers use the high grip now with the hand position quite high on that grip, but some archers use this position. I started like this. I wasn't trained out of it till very lately. So in my early videos, I do tend to swing outwards or hit my leg. Some archers still do that and they'll shoot fine at 70 meters. But most archers are trained to follow one particular method, which is the generally easier, more consistent. That is the pressure point here, push forward. All right, my battery unfortunately died, so I'm doing this on a different day. But I wanted to cover one more thing, and probably the most important thing, talking about follow through, how the bow should look and so on. So to recap, you don't necessarily want to force the bow to follow through or spin or drop in a certain way, nor should you try to stop it from dropping. These things don't need to be done. But what is important is you recognize the follow through as part of the diagnostics for your shot. Now, you will know when you've done a good shot. You will definitely know when you've done a bad shot, but you should identify what your template blueprint shot should look like. And that includes the way the bow moves after the shot. An easy way to tell this is when you do a good shot, especially when you're doing blank ball shooting or close distance, but there's no real stressor involved, then you should have a clean shot where the bow will drop a very specific way. But on a different day, in different conditions, and it might be in a windier day, or you're shooting long distance or competition, and you see yourself shoot, you're going to see the bow work or drop differently. And that will clearly indicate, if you don't feel it, you will see that something is different. Not necessarily wrong, but different. And the goal of especially target shooting is to be as consistent as possible. Again, not to achieve the same follow through every single time, but to work through the same process every single time. So if the bow does swing limply, it drops lazily, or you outswing it, inswing a bit too much, that will very much indicate a difference, an inconsistency in one of the crucial parts of the shot process. And typically speaking, that's the expansion. Speaking broadly, that one bit of movement when you expand will dictate the majority of your shot. All your setup might count for nothing if you can't get that last expansion correct. And that is, I would argue, one of the hardest things of doing any kind of archery. You might say the release. I would say this part, the expansion, is part of the release. And when you're not equally balancing your push and your pull forces, or you pull too far of your arm rather than using your back muscles, all these things will throw your shot off. It will go in a different direction than what you intended to do. And it might be for a whole round, for a whole shoot, for a whole day, you end up doing this one flaw repeatedly. You have to work with that. So again, if one day your bow starts spinning the other way and you flop inwards, are you collapsing too much? Are you putting too much rotation on one side, not the other? That sort of thing can be diagnosed with follow through. So the whole point of talking about the bow spin and follow through, and this is more so the front hand, we'll talk about the rear hand in a different case, but the front bow follow through is a vital part of your shot process. Don't try to replicate someone's follow through. It may be that the bow setup is different, the weights are different, the balance is different, or you're missing a stabilizer rod or extender, so therefore you won't fall the same way. But at the same time, you might not be using the same technique or the same grip. It's something which you should learn how to do rather than copy what someone does. Again, most archers will gravitate towards the same kind of follow through, but everyone does it slightly differently. More important, and just as we conclude, it's something which you need to recognize as your particular good or ideal, or your photogenic follow through, the one which you want to capture on a camera in a photo. That the one which you know is the good shot is the one you want to repeat. If you don't get the same feeling in the follow through, if it looks and feels different, that's feedback for you. And what you do with it, hopefully you can figure it out, or your coach can figure it out, you work together with your coach. But visually, that follow through tells us virtually everything. When you're doing a form check and someone watches several shots and your follow through is different each time, we can pretty much work backwards to diagnose what's worked differently and hopefully establish what works best for you. Anyway, I hope you found this little talk helpful, a little unscripted and casual, but we're working backwards through how we can use follow through to talk through or work through any issues you have in your shot process. Anyway, thank you all for watching. I hope that is helpful, and hopefully we'll see you again next time.